Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian. We're going to go over the final two games of the playoffs, and of course, the winners of those games will go on to the finals. But right now, we're going to talk about those playoff games, and then we're going to go kind of deeper into the how the portal situation is working for Michigan, and of course, some of the bigger names in the portal. Kind of go deeper into that than just uh, Michigan-related players. But first off, Miami is playing Ole Miss tomorrow. That's Miami, Florida, of course. Um, I really would like to see Ole Miss win, and I think they have the better team. However, if any of you have watched some of the Miami games thus far, somehow they're managing to win. How? I don't know, because I don't think they are better. I did not think they were better than Ohio State, and I quite frankly didn't think they were better than Texas A&M. But here we are. So um, I really personally, I think their luck runs out with Ole Miss. I think this is not the Ole Miss that disappoints people every year with a really bad loss. They have beat Georgia, which is about as legitimate a team as you could possibly get. They beat Georgia, and they have beaten virtually everybody except for, I believe it was Alabama. So, if I remember correctly, no, they lost to Georgia in the regular season. Then, yeah, that's who they lost to. So, this is a legitimate Ole Miss team with a legitimately good, quarterback and players everywhere that are making, playmakers at every position. So I think Ole Miss definitely should win this. However, that being said, Miami is also legitimate. They didn't beat Ohio State or Texas A&M by sheer dumb luck. You don't do that in the playoffs. Generally speaking, luck runs out real quick. So this is a legitimate team. Do I think they're better than Ole Miss? No, I do not. But that does not take away from the fact they definitely could win this game, especially if their defense was able to stop Ole Miss on more than just a couple of drives. Like if their defense posts stops, starts getting turnovers and post stops, it's gonna be a long night for Ole Miss. I don't think they're gonna do that against Trinidad Chambliss because he is a excellent quarterback. And I don't know that Miami has the offensive firepower with Carson Beck in them to get into a shootout. So I think that Ole Miss wins this game, probably by a touchdown and a half, like somewhere between 14 points. Once again, I could be wrong, but that also allows for the fact that Miami is going to score points more than likely. So maybe a 31-21 kind of game. That's what I see. So, but once again, could be wrong, but these two teams both deserve to be here. So may the best one win of them. Next, on Friday, it's Oregon and Indiana. Now, if you pay attention during the season, Indiana went to Eugene and beat Oregon at home, which was huge. That's kind of solidified Indiana as, hey, that's a legit team. So, and of course, last weekend or last weekend, I believe, when Indiana just basically smoked Alabama, and that wasn't even close. That was just ugly. Indiana was everybody started paying attention and be like, yeah, it's a real team. So Curtis Kennedy has Indiana playing at a level that's unheard of for that school. So they have bought in entirely, and I think that is going to continue. I do think Indiana is going to beat Oregon pretty handily. That and once again, not a shade thrown at Oregon. They deserve to be there. They have won they beat the people in front of them all the way up to this point. They only have what one, maybe two losses. That's not bad. That is absolutely within their capability of winning. And could they beat Indiana? Absolutely, they could. All it takes is a couple bad plays, and the game goes the exact opposite. So I don't see them beating Indiana. However, that's not to take away from them, and they are still a good team. They deserve to be there. They handled Texas Tech. You know, they beat them by 20. They beat them 23 to nothing. That is not something to sniff at. So I think Oregon will put up a fight. I think they will put up points, but uh, I think that in the end, Indiana will pull it out, and their defense is what's really gonna make the biggest difference. Because offensively, both teams are very capable, but defensively, Indiana, I believe, is better. So I think that is gonna show itself here, and I think Indiana wins by a solid, probably 2 touchdown margin. It would not surprise me if it was something like 34-20 by the end of the game. So, because I think Oregon is a personally, I think they're better than Alabama, and Alabama only managed to put up 3 points. So, I think that Oregon will put up at least 2 touchdowns minimum. So, because they are still an effective team. And yeah, Texas Tech had a decent defense. Not amazing, but it was good. And Oregon put up 23 on them. So, I think it is I think it's likely to be a 2 touchdown victory for Indiana. Those are my predictions for those games, and once again, all those guys deserve to be there, and, I have my people I want to win, but that does not take away from the possibility I am dead wrong. So, alright, moving on to, like, the portal and the tracker and just kinda the status of players in general. Oh, we'll start off with Michigan, the big ones that are coming back. As of now, mind you, this is 10 o'clock at night on the 7th of January. So this could change. The portal's out of control. So let's put it that way. This could change anytime. But some of the major ones that people are probably wondering about are Bryce Underwood, Andrew Marsh, Blake Frazier, offensive lineman, Jake Guarnero, offensive lineman, Evan Link, offensive lineman, defensive back Zeke Berry, offensive tackle Andrew Sprague, and running back Jordan Marshall. Those are all confirmed coming back. Those are the major ones that Michigan really needs to come back, especially Underwood, Marsh, and Marshall being back, along with all those offensive linemen. That's huge. That provides the continuity Michigan needs, and that gives Coach Whittingham that gives him this. He can sit there and say, okay, I have these players that have played together for quite some time, a year if not more. That is invaluable. He doesn't need to worry about introducing new players into the mix. I'm not talking about like freshmen. I'm talking about just in general, like bringing in players that mesh well with each other, who know each other's things. Sometimes a freshman can come in and do great things. That's certainly happened before, but he doesn't need to when he has this many returning players. That's experience that you cannot teach, especially to new kids coming out of high school. So these are all big ones. I know that one of them, I believe it was Guarnero, was like one of the higher rated offensive linemen. And I would imagine, being that who he is, that they would somebody was probably trying to throw a lot of money at him. And whether it's Coach Whittingham, I don't know why he came back, but it's good that he did. And I think that NFL teams, and this goes for all the players in the portal, I think NFL teams are going to look at players and see how they handle themselves in the portal. Were they loyal? Did they show character? Did they show integrity by staying with the schools that recruited them and offered them significant money to be there in NIL? And I think that's going to mean something to coaches. Maybe not in the immediate, but over the long term, coaches are going to look at the NIL and the portal and kind of see who bounced from school to school. So who displayed loyalty and commitment and things like that. That's going to mean something to people. Maybe not now because the portal is still, it's been around a couple of years, still relatively new, but in the future that very well could be something that coaches look at. So, um, those are the major Michigan players, and there is rumor that Justice Haynes may be coming back. I can't say that I think that's likely, but if he does, awesome. I mean, everybody would be happy to have him back. Moving on to just the general players as a whole. Now I'm going through a bunch of the top ones. This is not every single player. There's something like 3,500, 4,000. So excuse me if I don't rat off every single name and where they're going or whether they're not committed. As of this moment, and this is like I said, it's 10 o'clock at night on the 7th. I'm just going to go top players, positions, and where they might be going. Sam Levitt, he was a former Arizona State quarterback. He is currently uncommitted, but he is in a portal. Brendan Sorsby, he is going from Cincinnati to Texas Tech. All that oil money, man, that can buy you a lot of stuff. Drew Mestamaker from North Texas, who had just a million yards, it seems like, this past year. Incredible. He's going to Oklahoma State. Um, Cam Coleman, a wide receiver from Auburn. He is currently uncommitted elsewhere, but he is in the portal. Chaz Coleman, an edge rusher from Penn State. He's in the portal. Demond Williams Jr., quarterback from Washington. I believe, and this is just what I'm reading, it appears that Washington is going to be pursuing legal action to keep him at the school because he signed an NIL deal several days prior to entering the portal. Um, I believe that me personally, I think that he should stay. If he signed a deal, he needs to honor that. And I feel like that would set a bad precedence for somebody to say, "Hey, I'll give you all this money to stay." You say, "Yeah, no problem, I'll stay." And then 4 days later, you're in a transfer portal. I do think he will be legally required to stay at Washington. That is what I believe. And I think he should. I think that is the right thing to do. If you make that commitment, honor it, especially if you put pen to paper and you put your name in writing. That is something I feel should be done. So, just my opinion, especially if it's an ideal worth a considerable amount of money. Yes, absolutely. So, uh, Damon Wilson II, edge rusher from Missouri, currently uncommitted, but he's in the portal. James Smith, the highest ranked player from the highest rated portal player from Alabama, defensive lineman. He's uncommitted, but looks like he's gonna be going elsewhere. Uh, Mateen Ibaragba, I believe his name is, defensive lineman from Wake Forest, is going to Texas Tech. Uh, Several more uncommitteds. Mandrell Desir from Florida State, edge rusher. Jaden Woods, edge rusher from Florida. Coy Parrish, the safety from Minnesota. That would be an interesting one to watch, whether he stays in the Big Ten or goes elsewhere. Amarian Miller, wide receiver from Colorado, is going to Arizona State. He's been around, I believe. I don't know that he's ranked in as a 4-star here. His name has been he's been around a while. I believe this is will be a second or third school now. DeAndre Moore Jr., wide receiver from Texas, is out there. One of the bigger names that if you watch college football in general, DJ Lagway, the quarterback from Florida, he's in the portal. He would be a big get for somebody. Uh, my guess is he's going to go to a school that has a reputation, shall we say, for quarterback development. Because it would not surprise me if he has some real ambitions to be a starting NFL quarterback. I know that, I think a lot of quarterbacks would say that, but he has the potential there. He just hasn't lived up to it for whether that's his fault or not. I'm not going to go into that, but he has the ability. So my guess is he's going to go to school with a coach, even if it's not a national championship winning school per se. That'd be good, but my guess is he's going to go somewhere that they can develop him. Dylan Raiola, quarterback from Nebraska, obviously a very similar situation. He's probably going to try to find his way to school with a coach that can develop him into NFL caliber, at least draft pick, if not starting quarterback. Deuce Knight from Auburn, 6'4", 217 quarterback, out of out of Auburn. That could be an interesting prospect. I don't know that I believe he's either a freshman or sophomore, maybe redshirt one of those. I could be wrong, but that's gonna be interesting too. There's some talent there. Reed Harris, a wide receiver out of Boston College, committed to Arizona State. Arizona State is obviously putting some real effort into bringing people in, as you can tell by the number of recruits going there. Then we have a bunch of people who are committed. Uh, Caleb Hawkins, the running back from North Texas, is going to be joining his quarterback at Oklahoma State. Byron Brown, the South Florida quarterback, who was really exciting to watch last year. South Florida had some fun games. So he's really exciting to watch. It looks like he's going to be going to Auburn. So he'll be taking the place of their departing quarterback, it looks like. Carius Kern, offensive tackle from LSU, is going to Ole Miss. That's a big get. Ole Miss is really putting their name out there. So, and LSU has had some turmoil with the Lane Kiffin and Brian Kelly, Brian Kelly leaving, Lane Kiffin coming in, how that was handled. Some players didn't like that, as one might imagine. So there's some movement there. Devin Tompkins, a defensive lineman from USC, had just went to Alabama. He's actually already enrolled. So that's a big get for Alabama. You know, he's one of the top players. Um, Darren Gill Jr., wide receiver from Syracuse, is in the transfer portal. Lance Hurd, offensive tackle from Tennessee, 6'6", 330 pounds. He's currently uncommitted to another school, but I imagine someone that big with that much potential is going to get a lot of interest from people. So we'll see where that could be a really interesting one to go. Isaiah Cannon, the wide receiver from Georgia Tech, 6'4", 215, big big guy. He's going to Georgia, and if I was a wide receiver and I was at Georgia Tech, I probably would have done the same thing. Not known for their wide receivers outside of Calvin Johnson. That may be the only wide receiver from Georgia Tech I could ever name. So uh, Nick Marsh is actually going from Michigan State to Indiana. I can see why he might want to do that. Just a thought. Michigan State's kind of a dumpster fire right now. So we'll see what happens there. Uh, by the way, Pat Fitzgerald, great hire for Michigan State. Don't want to confuse that. It was a good hire. Rocco Becht, the quarterback from Iowa State, is going to Penn State. That is a big deal because Penn State's new coach came from there, and he turned Iowa State around, and I believe he's going to do the same for Penn State, more than likely. Uh, on the flip side of that, Penn State's, I believe Luke Reynolds was, I believe maybe their starting tight end or one of their up and coming players. He's going to Virginia Tech. So they are trying to say it's not all good news for Penn State, fortunately. And number 30 is Amaris Williams, an edge, looks like an edge rusher from Auburn, currently uncommitted. We'll go down to about 40 because there's a bunch of committed ones here. Toby Osunami, Osun Sanmi. Ooh, what a name. Edge rusher from Kansas State is going to Indiana. Here's the name. Hollywood Smothers, running back out of North Carolina State, committed to Alabama. And if you watch the Alabama games, their rushing attack this year was subpar according to their standards. So it would not surprise me if takes. I believe Alabama's starting running back was Jam Miller, and I think this guy will probably have a good chance to replace him next year. Terrell Anderson, wide receiver from North Carolina State, is going to Southern California. Ty Benefield, a safety from Boise State, committed to LSU. Good chance he wants to play for Lane Kiffin. Can't really say blame him. Benjamin Brahmer, tight end from Iowa State, is going to Penn State. Jacarius Peak, offensive tackle from North Carolina State, currently uncommitted. Not likely to stay uncommitted for long, though. That's good offensive tackles or offensive linemen in general are hard to come by. Xavier Gilliam, a defensive lineman from Penn State, is going to Tennessee. Colton Price, interior offensive lineman rather, is going from Baylor to Kentucky. Bordeaux is probably going to be happy about that. Quincy Porter, wide receiver, big guy, 6'4", 210. He's actually decommitting, or if I remember correctly, he was a surprise transfer from Ohio State. He's looking to go elsewhere. I don't know where he's going to go to get better opportunities, but hey, these young guys, they think there's something better out there. So don't know if the grass is always greener. Josh Hoover, quarterback from TCU, is going to Indiana. So Fernando Mendoza, when he gets drafted, which he undoubtedly will, there's going to be somebody in place to take over and somebody who has proven capabilities because TCU wasn't great, but they showed some flashes. Jontez Williams, a cornerback from Iowa State, is going to Southern California. Austin Simmons, quarterback from Ole Miss, I believe he was the one that Trinidad Chambliss replaced. He's going to Missouri. He'll probably be the starter there, more than likely. Ethan Grunkmeyer from Penn State. He was Penn State starting quarterback this year. He is going to Virginia Tech. Francis Breu, He's going from Pitt to actually he's undisclosed at this time. Don't know. He's uncommitted, but I assume that won't last long. Amarian Harris, offensive tackle, went from Arkansas to OU, Oklahoma. Keon Keeley, edge rusher from Alabama, losing another one. That's those guys short supply. Alabama may be deep, but how deep are they? Eugene Wilson III, wide receiver from Florida, is going to LSU. That's a big get for LSU and Lane Kiffin for sure. Quay, this is a name I actually saw. This is relatively recent. Qua Rasaw. He was a starting edge rusher for Alabama. He's gone now. That's a big loss for Alabama. They need like you start losing your depth and all that. That's tough. Alabama may be in for a bit of a hard time next couple of years, but we'll see. Quintravion Wisner, running back from Texas, is going to Florida State. And number 50, last but not least for this evening, John Henry Daly, edge rusher from Utah, is currently uncommitted. Um, it would not surprise me if Coach Whittingham is contacting or having some of his contacts in Utah trying to bring over some of the more talented players from that organization to Michigan. But I don't know the tampering rules, so that's just speculation. So, but those are the top 50 players currently in the transfer portal. Um, Now I imagine we're going to see a lot more movement. And my personal opinion in terms of the portal as a general whole it needs to be regulated. There needs to be more rules in place because this is currently the Wild West when it comes to that in the context of that. It is just incredible. Way too many players, people backing out of deals, not being held legally responsible. That needs to change. It really does. And I have no stake in it, so this is me just speaking objectively from an outside opinion. It needs to get regulated to a certain extent, not entirely. Things like one free transfer and then a transfer if the coach leaves or if you have to get a medical red shirt. Something to that effect. Not exactly like that per se, but there needs to be a system in place. And also these kids need to learn that you're legally accountable when you put your name on paper. So if you say I'll be here for let's just say 2 years, $1,000,000, you're there for 2 years, and if you decide that you wanna leave, you forfeit every dime of that, and whatever money you get where you're going has to go back to pay for that. Now, I know that sounds harsh, and some of those kids are young and dumb, and they'll look at it like, "Oh, I'm getting paid XYZ at this other place, I'll just use that and pay that back." But, you start doing that 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden that doesn't become so easy, and people start thinking you're unreliable and won't give you that money. So, things like that need to be taken into account. I think the portal needs to be there needs to be certain rules for that, but once again, my opinion, if the committee that oversees this just chooses not to do that, then that is their prerogative. So, um, but it is gonna be interesting to see what happens and how it all shakes out, and when the season starts next year, who's gonna be on what team. Because there's some of these guys who are uncommitted now could go to new teams and be literally the missing piece those teams need to take that next step. Indiana very well could reload and after the draft come back maybe even better if Kurt Signetti has his way because there's talent there. So and people want to go there now. Texas Tech is the same way. They got players going there. The Brendan Sorsby, that quarterback from Cincinnati, he's going to Texas Tech. He's the number 2 player in the transfer portal right now. So that's a big deal. So things like that will make a difference. It will matter. And the sooner they get there and the faster they get integrated into these systems, the better. Those guys that wait longer, people are going to be like, why am I paying a guy who waited 6 months to commit to a school? There's character things that get called into question there and everything. Now, some of that's not true. Some of those kids have reasons for it. Some of them, they're just waiting for money. And does a coach want a guy who's there for the money but not there to, put his all into playing ball? That's a question for those coaches to answer. So, just some thoughts from me in terms of how the portal and all that. I do think that Michigan players coming back, like Zeke Berry and Sprague coming back, I think that probably there was some of their teammates that said, "Hey, you know, you committed to the school. Let's do the right thing and stay committed." So, and I think that's a good thing. And I don't blame him for wanting to test the waters for sure. And I don't blame any player for that. Young dudes, there's a lot of money out there. But I think that if you can appeal to somebody's nature to the point where they change their mind and come back, I think that that shows that there is certain these guys, there's some integrity there. And that's a good thing. So we should encourage that in these young men. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener, and sometimes while the money is green, mm, that doesn't mean the school is gonna be loyal to you. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on a transfer portal. And obviously, I gave my predictions and who I hope wins these games upcoming in the next 2 days. But yeah, thanks for watching. I know I kind of got a little sidetracked there, but yeah, it's gonna be a very college football is very interesting, almost as interesting in the off season now as it is during the season, which is something you probably couldn't have said a couple years ago. So thank you for your time. I hope everybody's having a great evening. Um, Thanks for watching and just letting me talk. But yeah, I hope everybody has a good evening. Take care. Peace.